Hello and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today, I've got a very special guest. We've got Cecil Pineda, or Cecil, the CISO. But I'll go ahead and maybe let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey Josh, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, Cecil, currently the CISO at a healthcare organization called R1 RCM. Also co-founder of a local CISO organization here in Dallas called CISO XC. Um, been doing cyber for so many years, I forgot when, but it's been a while.
Well, have you gotten sick of it yet?
Not really. It's you know couple of months ago when I spoke with our board, I kind of described what we're doing is really stressful and tiring, but they were laughing when I said, but it's fun. It's fun to solve problems. It's fun to create solutions. It's fun to threat hunt. It's fun to comply with, compliance and regulations,
That's a
what
little
we've
less
given.
fun, but the others I'll give you.
Yeah.
uh, well, hey, tell us a little bit about how you got into cybersecurity to begin with.
Oh, yeah. In the late 90s, I was doing some programming development on very old platform that probably many people don't remember, FaxBase, Fax Pro, DBase. And I started when the internet started to, in Asia, started to to be popular. I started going to selling and supporting networking devices. One day, a large school ordered a bunch of routers and started getting interested about, oh, let me configure this. And then I started getting inquiries about firewalls. And at that time, those firewalls were super expensive. And
They didn't
I
do
started,
much.
yeah. And one of my friends said, hey, you should start um, uh, reselling and supporting Checkpoint. And I was a second partner in the Philippines to sell and support Checkpoint in 2000.
Oh, wow.
And after that, I just got addicted with cybersecurity. We didn't call it cyber at that time, but it was really good. We uh, started selling vulnerability assessments. My favorite uh, was a self penetration testing, and one of the local banks said, "Hey, if you wanna sell to me, show that you can, your team can hack into our network." And it didn't take a long time. It's probably minutes because their router was on a default password. So, and we did our first business with that bank, and
So,
then the rest is history.
so you've got a background in penetration testing, then, or at
Uh,
least you've had
not
a chance to do some.
a little bit, but a lot of it I have much smarter uh, technical team, and I mostly my expertise is mostly selling it, documenting the results, providing recommendations, those kind of things.
Well, I think you mentioned selling it, and one of the I guess common themes that comes up on this show is about how much of being a cybersecurity leader really revolves around going out and evangelizing or selling the different ideas and just communication in general, and how it really does require that you get up out of your chair and you go meet with the different department heads and just learn about what they're doing, because there's so much risk that's uncovered there. um, it sounds like you've experienced the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, no, it's our I'm in many CISO chat groups and meetings, and discussions, and it is really part of our. I think many of the successful CISOs I know are very good in selling
Yeah.
risk, selling solutions, selling, convincing leadership about. In fact, if you really look at it, budget wise, a lot of the people I know are able to get their budget are very good
Yeah.
salespeople. They
Well,
would,
and I would think the sales extends down to the end user, selling them on why they want to make
yeah.
or create a good secure password, or selling them on why they don't want to click on that link, or different things like that too.
Oh, and I would like to add, selling to your auditors and to your insurance broker. It's one one of my interesting discussion with our risk team here. They are responsible for helping us get cyber insurance, and we're trying to get as much coverage as possible. And even though everyone is has an increasing premium, we've managed to control our premium because I think part of that is we are able to uh, sell to them the program we built you know is able to manage our cyber risk. So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, no two programs look, the exact same, and there's just so many variables in cybersecurity where three companies can have the exact same technologies, but one can be terribly insecure, and the other one could be very, very secure, with the third being in the middle. So I can imagine, as an auditor, it can be very difficult to really read between the lines and tell the difference between the one that is secure sometimes and the one that's not. So being able to sell that, I can imagine being very, very pertinent and important there.
yeah, I was in a conversation with the CISO a couple of days ago, and we talked about the value of selling, and the outcome is really I'm probably gonna hate saying this word is feelings. How you make the other party feel about your story. I think it's telling the story at the end of the day is you want to see you want to convey, you want to make them feel that you have a good grasp of your program, and um, yeah, it's a lot of emotions, and it's a lot of the things we do is technical in nature, but at the end of the day we make decisions and we pivot based on how we feel about certain technologies, certain issues that we encounter every day.
Uh, Absolutely. In fact, I would argue that emotions play a very critical role in cybersecurity. One of the things that I've learned is that at the moment a user realizes their mistake, say they click on a fish and they hit that landing page and they realize they made a mistake, there's actually an emotional response that they have. And that emotional response can help anchor that lesson. And when we use, really good just-in-time learning combined with that emotional response they're already having, we get better results. And so I think emotion has an incredibly important part in securing our enterprise. And of course, our industry is filled with largely with people that are very technical, maybe not as good at the social skills. And so I think that that's one of those elements that maybe doesn't get as much focus as it needs to, both from the need for more sales in cybersecurity. And one of the things, my big ones, is marketing, how we've got to bring marketing into cybersecurity. And it's not just what you think, or maybe it is. I don't know. I don't presume to know what you're thinking, but it's when I say bring marketing into cybersecurity, one of the examples I think of is when you look at advertising. All of the ads that hit us back in the late 90s were more like 60, 45 seconds, 30 seconds at the shortest. Whereas nowadays, ads that hit us are 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds long, with the longest ad being 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And I look at that and I say, well, the reason they're doing that is because of this behavioral science principle that talks about how if you break things down into tiny bite-sized chunks, you can get better results. And so they've realized it and they've deployed it. And I really believe that that's one of the areas that we can be much more effective in with cybersecurity if we start trying to break our messaging down into its core components, make it as simple as possible, and take up as little of the user's time as possible too.
Yeah. No, I was guilty of putting too much information in the past, and
I've been guilty of that too. We all
yeah,
have.
and after many meetings with executive leaders, with board of directors, and you're right. You can't send all the messages. You gotta focus on key items and then some key takeaways, and break them down into several instances. You don't just deliver everything, because it's leaders have too many things in their mind. It's not just cyber, it's other things, revenue, profitability. But especially with speaking with business leaders, I used to have 12, 14 slides for my board presentations. Now probably 4 slides.
Yeah, and to echo that, I like to make a joke that when I was a pen tester, I was rigid and it was my network, and you had to do things my way. Then when I became a CISO, I learned to balance the use case. And then when I became a CEO, I realized I don't care about cybersecurity. I only care about sales. Now I make jokes, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of truth there that it's the revenue that drives this, and for that CEO or that any executive that you're talking to, they have a lot of juggling they have to do. And it means that your priority may not be the number one most critical thing to the executive. It doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that they've got limited time. And so often the more succinct you can be in your messaging to them, the more likely you are to actually get that positive outcome that you want as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we've talked about what got you into cybersecurity. One of my favorite topics is AI. We were talking ahead of time about how it's obligatory. We have to talk about it because it's a tech podcast. There's a
Yeah.
law, I think, in Colorado or something. But jokes aside, let's start with the scary side of AI. There's a lot of threats that come with it. So, as a CISO, what are you sort of tracking as your biggest concerns when it pertains to AI?
Well, I want to start with the bad guys first. We are worried. Even without the aid of AI, they're getting some wins here and there. And just imagine, with the use of AI, it's gonna exponentially increase their capabilities, and they're gonna use it in their phishing, in developing their exploits. Um, we've seen those deepfakes are really um, believable. I've seen a couple actual um, deepfakes that are really, I couldn't tell. We've come across a person that I know that, hey, my father called me, and for the first 8 minutes, she believed that was her father.
Wow.
And yeah,
8 minutes. I mean, and that's not just somebody you barely know, it's her own
it,
father.
it was conversational.
Oh, wow.
And however, when they started talking about more personal, intimate stuff, and she suddenly said, okay, this is not him. And for someone being on the phone for several minutes with someone that they think they know, it's scary, because they
Yeah.
said, hey, just the tone, and it's really him. And she immediately called me and told me the story that, good thing she didn't send money. They were asking for like $16,000.
Wow.
The father, the fake father, and good thing. But of course, for her, it's wow. If this is happening to me, and this is probably happening to other folks, and again, that's personal level, but at the corporate level, many of my leaders have video samples online, voice samples that I heard they just need few seconds of samples to create a, you know, a version, a deepfake version of your voice. So, I worry about that a lot. We've done a lot of awareness campaign internally to, hey, spot them. These are the, identifiers. Maybe you need a secret word or something to use within your family, within your corporate teams to use it if you wanna spot a deep fake. Um, on the positive side, I'm very, I'm very. I think we're entering this next. When the internet came, it was game changer. I think this AI revolution is going to be really good for many of us. Again, it's the same thing. The good will come with the bad, and I see a lot of benefits, a lot of improvements. I work in the business of healthcare, and I know we're gonna increase our efficacy in many of the things we do using AI.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Like just being able to look at it in a patient's actual entire record. I mean, I know they've got all these health management systems, but I by no means have any experience being a doctor, but I do have experience being a patient, and they are in and out of that room so quickly that there's no way that unless it's like some really critical issue that they have the time to even have the full understanding of just my record. So I got to imagine that stands to help immensely in areas like
yeah,
that, diagnostics. I actually read that they expect us to pass the longevity escape velocity sometime in the 2030s, which means if we can live to whenever this happens in the 2030s, we can potentially live forever. I imagine the caveat there is if we can afford it. Uh,
yeah. If we
uh,
can afford it, yeah,
but it is really interesting some of the really cool stuff that's coming with
yeah,
technology right now. I mean, we've got quite literally human brains in the cloud that we can rent.
yeah,
We've got photon based processors coming out of China and now a university in the US. We've got internet that's 1,000 times faster than what we currently have. I mean, it's just
yeah.
technology is expanding at a rate. Well,
I,
I guess it is very much like the beginning or the birth of the internet all over
yeah,
again.
it is all over, and I think in everything we do, I think AI will be there to support, assist, probably at certain areas, even replace us. Unfortunately,
You know, it was Stanford University that was saying by all of or all of our tests, they basically said we're running out of ways to test AI's intelligence. And by all of the tests that we have, they're, borderline or getting close to being as smart as humans. They said, but they're not even close to being, on the adaptation to where they should be if it were actually that smart. And so they said, but there's this missing element that we really have no way to measure. And that's the difference between being human and being artificial
yeah,
intelligence. And it's interesting. They keep giving them better reasoning capabilities. Supposedly, Pro is incredibly smart. But I don't know. Did you see the new Gemini 2.0? Did you get a chance to play with that yet?
no, no, not yet. But I'm a long time user of Gemini. Before I just use Google search. Now I ask my phone and even explains the answers. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah. No, I'm
it's
a
exciting
fan
and
too.
it's exciting and terrifying.
And Gemini, the cool thing is it has massive context windows, so it can watch a whole video and give you a summary of it. In fact, I was playing with that notebook LM, and you can drop like if there's a really long article or a research paper you want to read, but you don't have time, you can drop it in, and
Yeah.
it'll create this podcast about it.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
Oh yeah, no, the AI even says and stutters and all of it just to make it, and it's
Oh.
like back and forth between two people. In fact, here, but never mind, I can't do it in the middle of this. Otherwise, I'd play it for you. But I had it do it about the podcast just because I wanted to load up every episode so that I had sort of a repository that I could go back and reference. And I'm like, well, let's see what this podcast would be like, and it's really interesting. I mean, just the back and the forth. It sounds a lot like almost a Howard Stern episode. It's interesting. So you have to check it out at some point. But
Yeah.
no, it's AI is really changing both the threat landscape as well as just about everything, and coming up with a lot of new fun things, but certainly increasing the amount of attacks that we're seeing as a result.
Increase and the velocity. Just imagine being able, if you're an AI hacker, being able to create your own script on the fly, and then you see you got blocked, you create another way to get around those filters at a speed that you doesn't have to code again, and just on the fly create another way of you know targeting a
I
host.
mean, you're making me miss the days of ethical hacking here. But no, I agree. I mean, just the speed at which you can create custom tools. They've got this tool called Open Interpreter where you can put large language models directly into the command line, and you can give them access to Kali Linux and be like, "Hey, do this." And if it's you're using like the major models, they're pretty restricted. I say pretty restricted because all of these restrictions are seem to be keyword based, and so if you just like tell the AI, "Hey, from now on, replace this word with this word," then it'll bypass any of the security constraints. Or the other one I've found is that it's all about that first prompt. If you ask it to do something outside of its guidelines, it has to be included as to why, the ethical reason around why, in that very first prompt. And then 10 prompts later, you won't even have to tell it why, it'll just do
Yeah,
it. But if you ask it to do something like write a fish and it says no, you're never going to be able to convince that thread to do it. You're just better off moving to a new thread and starting off that way. Um, well, hey, one of my favorite topics that I like to bring up is what do we do with those chronic offenders in our cybersecurity teams?
oh,
And there's two
why do you
camps
have to ask
of
me this?
cybersecurity. You've got the camp of carrot, the camp of stick. I am very firmly a carrot, but what are you? How do you
I
identify carrot or stick?
uh, quickly, I'm a carrot, but it is, you know, sometimes they're just different people. Different, they're just repeat offenders, and you may have to use a stick once in a while. But uh, I had three, my three kids. They are grown up now, but um, I'm a carrot kind of guy. My wife is the opposite one, and I've seen the benefit of doing the carrot, but I've also, my wife is a disciplinarian, and um, they change the behavior change is when she starts using the stick. So, what do you see in pub? You've done this so many. You've interviewed a lot. What's the? I'm interested to see what other CISOs are telling you.
Most CISOs are really big fans of the carrot. They think that the stick should be a sort of last resort.
Yeah.
But there is the occasional person that I run into that heavily believes in the stick. I disagree, but I've had at least two firmly stick believers that have been on the show, and I'm not saying that they don't raise some good points, and I definitely think they do. I just feel like we've got to start with the carrot and focus on motivating people. And and unlike your kids, we can't exactly spank our employees to get them to work better or put them in timeout or different
Yeah,
things like that. And so, for that employee, in my opinion, it's better that they want to change, and that we've explained why, and that we've used, positivity to drive that desire, because they may comply if I crack the whip, but they're complying. They're not learning. There's no emotion put into it. They're going through the motions because otherwise they'll get in trouble. And I just don't think that's a real positive culture.
yeah, no, I'm with you. But I want to share something that we've done at many places I used to work and currently today. I always, I hope no one at my employer is listening. There will be some. We always joke about this, Josh. We've created some layers. We call this initiative called "It Should Survive the First Click," meaning even if you click it, we should have, layers and layers, not just second, third. If I could afford it, we'll have fourth layer to
Yeah.
catch that. Because I think, especially with AI, all these phishing attacks are going to be just more sophisticated. Especially if they started to profile their target. Uh, you know, they know this person is big on certain food or certain basketball team or something. you know People could actually use AI to create a something that will click, make the person click it.
Yeah, no, I
And I
mean,
think,
we built an AI that learns what you're most likely to click on and targets you accordingly. So if we, the good guys, have done it, I'm certain the bad guys have already done
yeah,
it. In fact, I've seen quite a
well,
few of those phishing attacks that seem like they were created with an AI.
now I we probably need to talk after this discussion.
I'd be happy to. But no, it's there. There are a lot of these types of attacks targeting us every day, and I see far too many that they almost had to have been put together by AI. It's just there's no other way. And I know
Yeah,
you don't want to be the first person to cry Skynet or whatever, but that's a joke. Believe it
yeah.
or not, we wrote one article about talking about AI driven phishing, and we called it the real Skynet, or something like that. And to this day, that drives an insane amount of traffic on Google to our website just every day as people searching Skynet and AI. So clearly the average person is a little bit concerned. So, okay, so we've talked about carrot versus stick. Another topic that I like to really hit on, and I think it's particularly well suited for the healthcare industry, is micro training. So in my experience, particularly doctors, and I don't want to pick on doctors themselves, but they're very, very busy. And because they're busy, they don't have a lot of time to do security awareness training, and that can make it difficult to, just for them to find the time to actually do it, and sort of move on. And what I've found is that the shorter the training, the more effective it is, particularly with people like that. I'm curious, and if you can't answer this, that's fine. But is that something that you've seen where doctors just tend to be too busy for the training?
Well, unfortunately, there's no doctors in our organization, but we do have a lot of executive. Everyone at my company is incredibly busy, and And I know that many of them think that our cybersecurity training is just something that they just have to do. But I can tell you that I don't think their whole heart and their whole attention is in the training, and that's why
Wow.
I actually just a few days ago I reassigned one of my leaders in my team uh, to fully engage the organization and I want him to focus 90% of his time on awareness. And they're the first line of defense. They are the first one to get all. We have all these tools that block many of this, but we don't block 100%. We block like maybe 99.9%. There's still that are going through the filters, to our policies, to our tools. And I really want in 2025, I, I want to develop more targeted training to finance, to HR, and probably break them down to a more meaningful pieces instead of having them stay for 30 minutes and everyone's so busy. In fact, I noticed that some of the training are being done after work because that's the only time they have time to go through training. And I just feel bad because I wish I have most companies would have the means to, or companies like training awareness tools out there to create those micro micro training. And over your next slide, role based training,
Yeah.
because I think
Go ahead.
it's important that people get a training that's modeled after what they do in a company.
There was a study that found that when the training was contextual to the person's role, that it was 15 times more effective.
Oh, I
15x more effective. But it makes sense because no longer is it this random thing that doesn't apply. The second you connect it to their job, whether it's IT, whether it's networking, whether it's cybersecurity development, it hits home a lot more, and people are so much more likely to listen because it
yeah,
makes
they can relate it quickly.
yeah, exactly. Um, so you hit on a couple. I think you said HR. I might have heard finance. What roles are you looking at as sort of those critical roles that maybe when it comes to role based training, it's hard to just hit everybody out of the gate.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you tend to prioritize specific roles. And I found a couple of things through this podcast. Number one, different people look at roles in completely and wildly different ways. Well, I won't give examples because I want to throw off your answer. But I'm always curious what different leaders are looking at in terms of what roles they would start with from a role based training perspective.
I actually working on reviewing our executive training. I think I want to start at the top. Oh,
I
I'm
like
pretty
that.
sure my executives are not going to be happy when we roll this out. But of course, I'm going to make sure that my boss will approve of this. Uh, uh, Probably that's my first step is the executives. Then I we work in a healthcare environment and there's risk everywhere. So I'm going to start at you know departments or people where we have the greatest risk. I don't want to wait. If you know, I would if I could roll it out tomorrow, I would do it. I've asked my guy to start developing a more cohesive, more targeted cybersecurity awareness for 2025, and I'm pretty sure he's doing his job right now. Maybe he's listening on this.
Hey, if he's listening, we're giving him all kinds of really good advice, right?
Yeah,
So, well, that really, really great information. Um, one of the things that I've been interested in and hearing about how different people are doing it is gamification, and so I'm curious. if you've done any gamification around awareness, and if you have, maybe what it looked like and what were the results.
I'm really torn on this subject, Josh, because I think it goes back to the topic we had 10 minutes ago about the busy schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of gamification. I've used some of them in more targeted, some similar to like a very technical training. We are using a current tool right now that are are using scores. The more session you're attending, the more problems you're solving. We really love the platform. However, it's not cheap. Um, about 40 to 50 of my team members are enrolled on it, and the first few months, the adoption is very high because they want to be on the leaderboard. But at the same time, especially people in cyber, essentially every parts of the organization I work for are so busy. Um, you know, um, I would really find if there are tools, if there are awareness solutions out there that can combine this micro-based training, the role-based that are also gamified, but something that's also not taking a lot of time. I think that will be a really good. My folks were enjoying it. Now, remember, the first three,
You
four
know,
months,
that's like fish firewall sales pitch. You're like doing it for
yeah,
me.
the first 3 4 months, this platform I was using, it's not an awareness tool. It's a technical cybersecurity training platform for SOC analysts, for incident response, for forensics. It's really good. It has some modules for beginners, for anyone who's entry level. It has a lot of modules. It is gamified with scores. The thing is also in a what I noticed is the first 3 or 4 months the adoption is very high. Then it started to wane. You could see the adoption is going down, and I wish I'm pretty sure the developer of that tool is thinking about how to sustain the adoption. But I don't know. Hopefully, there's something out there that will you know analyze also the adoption, find a way to make it more interesting. Maybe by using more different games you know
Yeah.
in the
By the way, I'm a little conflicted on gamification as well. I think that it can be effective, but you have to be really careful in how you use it because being mindful of people's time. At the end of the day, everyone's at work to to drive business, not to do their training or play games or things like that. And so, definitely I have seen areas where it was done maybe ineffectively, like where it's, hey, play this game, which is great. You can play the game, but often playing a game doesn't necessarily relate or return in that person actually being more secure. And most people wouldn't want to play it anyway. And so I've certainly seen that. I know what we do is we try to make it more of a game of cat and mouse around the phishing. So that phishing, if they do click on it, it doesn't feel like a big betrayal. But we're also warning them ahead of time to create that vigilance around it. So we found a happy balance there where we make the phishing a game, but we don't have these, hey, let's play a game and learn about cyber. And, it's like Star, I don't know, whatever. I'm trying to think of games from back in the day, but they're always like these games that are based off of like the ones we grew up playing. So, um, well, very cool. I appreciate all of the really great advice that you've given today. I'd like to end every episode by just asking, if you had 3 bits or even just 1 bit of advice that you would give to either, even your team or other people that are trying to build out an effective security awareness team or training program, what would your top tips sort of be?
My goodness, we discussed some of them.
Well, you can repeat them. It's okay.
I think top of mind will be probably content wise. It has to be, you've seen those and uh, Super Bowl commercials. You don't have to produce an expensive one, but I think they should be, you know, will catch your attention. Even for a few minutes. You know, you remember those things that are really impactful. And I think that's one is the messaging should be crisp, clear, short, if possible.
Yeah. Simple, easy to
Um,
understand.
yeah, and something that, you know, people forget when they leave that session. When it's impactful, when they see an actual phishing is, oh, I remember this. They kind of connect those dots. I think that's really important. I think um, creating custom training for different types of users is really important. People working in human resource should have a separate module if there's something that are developed. And again, going back to it should be interesting. It should be something that I people are just dreading to go through those pages. You know, create something that's impactful and applicable to their day jobs. And a lot of the things they could just rewind it. They'll
I like it. And to echo what you said, about people remembering those different red flags and cross from one fish to another. There is this behavioral science principle called identical elements theory. And it's the reason that when you buy a new car, you start to see that car at every red light, other people driving it. But it talks about how when you learn about something really well, you'll start to see it everywhere. And I bring that up because I always like to give my number one top bit of advice for avoiding fish. It's not hover, it's not even think before you click, it's trust your gut, because our body does have a built-in defense mechanism that can spot phishing attacks. It just needs to be trained. And the more of those simulations or even actual fish that we go through, the better we get at detecting those things. And so I always just say, trust your gut. But they've actually found that people that have gone through a simulation are over 70% less likely to fall for that same fish in the wild. So
yeah,
that's part of the reason we run them, right?
yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Cecil, stick with me just a little bit longer. But for the audience, thank you for joining us for another episode of Fishing for Answers. Have a great day.